So I'm actually going to use this chair as well because I got a little bit of a lengthy talk and it makes it easier to switch the pages. So, first I want to thank y'all for the invitation. It's amazing to be here around such revolutionary people. It's just really cool to see, I don't know, some people might not see it that way, but I see this as an act of like international solidarity. Even though we're like right across the border, it's still, two different organizations, two different countries, coming together for something. And I think that's cool as hell. So I'm here as a representative, youth organizer for Workers' World Party. We've been active in the United States for decades. I actually got some comrades there who came with me right there. What's up, yo? And we've had a party branch in Detroit since the 70s. I wasn't around then. But yeah, we've been leading a whole lot of struggles in Detroit. We're actually one of the biggest left tendencies in Michigan, so we're out there trying to put in work. And yeah, I just got back from the Antifa revolution downtown. Just beheading some white people. But don't be fooled by the ANCOM patch. I am a thorough Marxist-Leninist. And I'm gonna go into the talk now. So as Marxists and as communists, we learn from history. We study the successes and the shortcomings of past revolutions, not only in an attempt to understand history and our current conditions, but to guide actions in the present and to guide us on the path to building a revolutionary future. In this current time, we're seeing the failures of this corrupt capitalist system. Capitalism is in decay and is crumbling in on itself. In Detroit, we see it every day. We see the results of capitalist exploitation and degradation. We see mass water shutoffs for delinquencies of less than $150. I actually have a comrade who had his water shut off for 50 cents. His mother was short 50 cents in her account, and they sent an email, and they didn't think anything of it. 50 cents, and they got their water shut off. And it's wild because like the big businesses in Detroit rack up delinquencies of hundreds of thousands every year and go unpenalized and continue to receive subsidies. Thousands of homes and abandoned buildings lay vacant while this race of homelessness rises in the city. Homes are being illegally foreclosed and auctioned off left and right, kicking families to the streets, while the city's emergency funds used to help continue the gentrification of Detroit. There's actually a conference that they had in earlier October where they invited mayors from all over the country to basically see how much of a haven of revitalization Detroit was. But it was actually just them giving these people a template for how to go and gentrify other cities just as fast. It's fucked up. Our party held a Real Detroiters Speak Out during this conference, but many community organizations joined together to answer this narrative and expose the reality of poverty and destruction of our neighborhoods at the hands of the banks and the corporations that we experience every day. And that's just one city. We're seeing these trends of destruction happening all over the world. The proletariat is growing increasingly into a class of hyper-exploited, low-wage workers who can barely afford the minimum resources required to even be productive at work. Comrades, we have a problem. But we also have a solution. And we're here today gathered as revolutionaries to commemorate 100 years of the Bolshevik Revolution. Now's the time for celebration, now's the time for action, but it's also a time to revisit the most important events of one of the most important events of the 1900s for the global working class, and how we can use the lessons learned there to build a revolutionary future. The Bolshevik Revolution was quite a few things. Many people view it in a very static and simplified way. Hold up, just came here from another country, I'm still catching They see it in a simplified way. See, the Bolshevik Revolution was not only the first successful socialist revolution, but it was also the first revolution to successfully put the ideas of Marx and Engels into practice. Leninism is not only Marxism in the age of imperialism, but quite literally Marxism applied successfully. Marxism in practice. and it was a Leninist model that was adopted by revolutionaries throughout the global South. Still to this day, the Leninist model is used across the global South to wage people's war against capitalism and imperialism. In short, Leninism works, obviously. But let's talk about some facts. People love to hear the facts, the numbers behind the successes and the shortcomings of historical events. So right now, I want to give a little bit of insight into the gains of the socialist revolution in the Soviet Union. First, I want to talk a little bit about the emancipation of women during the revolution. Communists understand, or should understand, the role in which special oppressions hold in upholding capitalism. Just 6 weeks after the revolution, the church's patriarchal control over marriage was dismantled, and after a year revolution, a code was released that ensured complete equality of rights between both spouses. And that's super huge, you know, coming from a country with such a backwards Tsarist regime history. In 1920, the Soviet Union was the first country in the world to legalize abortion, which is super huge. Again, the first country, you know, the first successful socialist country to like really do these things. Prior to legalization, abortions were conducted in secret for large sums of money under unsanitary and dangerous conditions. To protect the women, the state provided abortions free of charge in any Soviet hospital capable of performing them. In 1927, women formed 12.8% of the Communist Party. 1/3 of students in institutions for higher education were women, and in the same year, women formed over 25% of the membership of trade unions. Again, these numbers aren't huge, but given the short, period of time that this happened, there was like somebody said it earlier, there was like a social upheaval. You know, these are things that take time, and just to watch these numbers grow at that rate is amazing. There's a trend popularized by like anarchists and rad-libs to try to paint communists and leaders as racist. We know that's not the case, and it's never been the case, because the Bolshevik Revolution set a template for anti-racism and internationalism through Lenin's thesis on the national question. The Bolsheviks understood that capitalism and imperialism created conditions for national oppression, and capitalism and imperialism is also upheld by national oppression. Lenin favored self-determination for oppressed people because there can be no socialism, no road to communism without dismantling the oppressive hierarchies that capitalism upholds. As well as abolishing anti-gay legislation left over from the Tsarist era, the USSR actively supported the struggle for black liberation in the US and abroad. Black workers from the US were invited by the state to immigrate to the Soviet Union and observed a much better life, a life free of the racism they would have experienced in the States. Paul Robeson, a black activist, communist, and actor from the US, stated that the social climate for black folks in Russia was like something unheard of in the States. He said, in Russia, I felt for the first time like a full human being. Wait, I gotta do the Paul Robeson voice. No color prejudice like in Mississippi. No color prejudice like in Washington. It was the first time I felt like a human being. You know who he is. He's got like this super deep, amazing voice. He's the coolest. The Black American poet Langston Hughes also shared similar sentiments and has written many poems dedicated to the work of Lenin and the USSR's dedication to racial equality. Racial equality and the abolition of national oppression was not just an idea or a series of empty statements in the USSR, but an active state project. The Soviet Union had become a vanguard for the socialist bloc and inspired socialist revolution and national liberation movements throughout the global South. All over the world, oppressed people were taking up arms and expelling colonizers from their lands and loosening the yoke of capitalist exploitation. The Soviet Union played a huge role in supporting the socialist revolutions in Cuba, the DPRK, Vietnam, China before the Southern Soviet split, Angola, and many other countries fighting for socialism and liberation from colonialism. The October Revolution showed that capitalism and imperialism can be defeated and provided a framework for how to go about organizing the revolution and the structuring of a society where capitalism had been crushed. There is a reason why Castro, Ho Chi Minh, Mao Zedong, Thomas Sankara, etc. all identified as Marxist-Leninists. Leninism again provided a workable framework, put the works of Marx and Engels into practice for the first time at one on such a large scale. The 1900s were a time of global revolution for the global South, and Russia's material and military aid to the other countries in the socialist bloc showed the nature of their internationalism. We also realized that no country is perfect, and although the USSR had many social and economic gains, it still had to make concessions to bourgeois elements of society, which inevitably led to its demise. This was a product of the difficulties of trying to build socialism in a relatively backward country, magnified by the fact that the socialist revolution did not spread to other, more developed capitalist countries, as anticipated by Lenin and the other Bolshevik leaders. It's common sense that it takes people to build society. There is a need for industrial workers, but also skilled tradespersons, as well as intellectuals and many other classes of people who would have aligned themselves closer with the capitalist bourgeoisie in opposition to the peasants and workers. Many of the most advanced workers in society actually died during the revolution, which meant that there was a vacuum for skilled workers. In order to help rebuild society, it was necessary for the Bolsheviks to build alliances with the peasantry, but the peasantry had a different set of values at the time than the industrial proletariat. The proletariat was focused on the socialization of society, whereas the peasants valued private property and private ownership of their land. This alliance would obviously come with its own contradictions. One of the biggest contradictions was how to keep loyalty to the peasants who had valued privatization over socialization in the process of socializing society. The Bolsheviks issued the new economic plan in 1921 that opened up the markets again to stimulate food production, which had dropped to a low after the attempted counter-revolution. Although there was more food produced, it created a subclass of rich peasants, the kulaks as they were called, while the majority of the peasantry remained poor. And after Lenin's death, the difficulties of how to move forward with collectivization of agriculture created problems and even pushback for many peasants. There was also the issue of having to rely on the old Tsar's administrative apparatus for organizing society, because they were skilled and able to play administrative roles. Using the old apparatus caused problems because the old Tsar's officials used their position in government as an opportunity to build privileges and hierarchies within the Communist Party. Also, as a result of making arguably necessary concessions to officials from the old society, they also brought with them the oppressive ideas from that society. And after Lenin's death, women's rights and LGBT rights were set back as well. We know that social systems don't change overnight, and we understand that, like any revolution, a counter-revolution is protracted and strategic. And the material conditions of the Soviet Union, reopening of the markets, and the bureaucratization over the course of decades were a factor in the counter-revolution. Of course, what was fundamental to the difficulties of building socialism was the unrelenting opposition and attack from the imperialist powers from the 18 countries that invaded the USSR after the revolution. The loss of 20 million lives in repelling the Nazi invasion, to the Cold War and the military massive buildup during the Reagan years. So, it was really going through it, you know. But it's important to still, talk about these lessons that we learned from, a few shortcomings of certain revolutions. However, with all the difficulties, we held the gains of the Soviet Revolution. It provided for its people's basic needs, housing, jobs, education, and a rich culture like no capitalist country has ever been able to do. It built a backward capitalist country into a great socialist federation that stood as a counterweight to the imperialist domination. It provided a model for reorganizing the right of oppressed nations, even created a special Congress of nationalities that stands in stark opposition to the white supremacy and national chauvinism of every capitalist country that has manifested itself to an unprecedented degree today in the era of Trump and capitalism at a dead end. An important lesson to be learned from the Bolshevik Revolution is that the revolution does not end after the initial fighting. The revolution is not over during socialism or while a country is building socialism. On contrary, the revolution and the antagonism between the ruling class and the oppressed are amplified as long as imperialism still exists. One of the factors that led to the counter-revolution was the Soviet Union having to maintain a military counterweight to the US imperialism in an economy one-third its size. Because the class struggle is heightened, the Communist Party must be extra vigilant and strategic in consolidating the winds of the revolution. When certain concessions are necessary, there must be an active program to prevent the formation of a bureaucracy and to open to prevent revisionism in the revolutionary movement. We appreciate the revolutionary character of the Cuban Communist Party today and being open and forthright with the masses, and urging them to defend the revolution as some capitalist measures are introduced to facilitate the growth of the economy in the face of the continuing blockade. We believe Mao's cultural revolution, with its successes and shortcomings, was an attempt to purge revisionism and reaction from the party, though it firmly rejected its ultimate characterization of the Soviet Union as social imperialists. Like, we all know that that's bullshit, but neither here nor there. We're all in this here, right? We're not idealists. We understand that alliances and coalitions have to be made, that concessions sometimes set us back. However, it is important to acknowledge that the fall of the Soviet Union proves the necessity for a continuation of that revolution, even during times of victory. And I think that that's super important because lots of folks have this idealistic view of revolution, of the Soviet Union, of any successful revolution, that, like, you know, once the last king's head rolls, or fucking once Trump is, you know, knocked off or some shit like that, that, like, shit's just gonna work itself out, you know? Like, that's not materialism, that's not how things work. And we understand that there are gonna be bourgeois elements that are left over. Like, socialism is not the end goal. We're communists, you know? Socialism is a transitional period between capitalism and communism. And it's important to really analyze what that means and how that looks, you know, in different situations and different societies. And understanding that it will never ever look the same for two nations. So here's the big question. At the revolutionaries, centers, how do we build for the revolution, right? Like, what do we do? How do we keep the legacy of the Bolshevik Revolution alive? And how do we take it further than just commemorations, conferences, and celebrations? Today, capitalism is at a dead end. Every gain in the productive forces in this era of high technology leads to more poverty, unemployment, and low wages rather than... Sorry, this is my glasses, probably. Alright, cool. Give me a little bit of time to breathe. Rather than liberating humanity as it should be doing. The very survival of the planet is at stake, as witnessed by the disastrous consequences of climate change as the capitalists destroy the earth in their drive for profit. The export of capital pits worker against worker on an international scale, driving down wages for the entire working class and destroying the aristocracy of labor that the capitalists relied on for social peace in the imperialist countries, while super exploiting developing nations around the globe. The system is overripe for a socialist transformation. We know this, I'm sure, that's why we're all here. First and foremost, though, we have a responsibility to the people. We gotta meet the people where they are, stepping outside of our circle of activists and academics, integrating with the people, and making this revolutionary history accessible. You can't have a revolution without the people. I don't know the exact climate here, but I know that in the States there's a trend of, you know,